Guys, welcome to the Chief Life Podcast. I'm Matthias Turner, joined by co-host Stacey Lee Turner.
Hey guys.
Today, we're excited. We've got Emily Gallagher on the line. Emily, welcome.
Thank you. This is so fun to do this via video, just hanging out with you guys.
Yeah. Definitely. It's
excited.
Cruisy coffee chat.
Yeah. So for the
Totally.
listeners, if you're not watching, jump across to YouTube because you can watch it all there as well. And then you get to see all of our pretty faces.
Yes, you did.
Emily, so to give you a bit more of an introduction, you're from Conscious Boss, and I mean, Stace actually met you at an event a few weeks ago. Stace, do you want to dive a little bit more into what the event was?
Yeah, definitely. So it was a women's event. It was actually run by Marina Perry, and Emily was one of the guests who was being interviewed for Marina's, I guess, podcast. That episode was going to be aired as her first episode of her podcast, I believe.
I think so. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. I think it was like a podcast launch, but then I think, it was going on the podcast as well, so that'll be good.
That's super cool. And Emily's also a coach, collaborator. On your website, you used obsessive collaborator, which I really loved, a speaker and an experience creator, and I guess just all-round super inspiring human. I just loved hearing you speak, and even since watching your TED Talk as well. So guys, if you haven't seen that, jump over onto YouTube or Emily's website and have a look at her TED Talk. It's just, if you're needing a bit of motivation or inspiration to get some fire up your butt, that's definitely a good place to start. Yeah. Now, is there anything that we've left off that you wanted to include in your little bio introduction?
No, I think that's good. I mean, I was had a meeting with someone yesterday, and he was like, I was just on your website, and I was like, oh God, my website is so out of date, so I need to I need to go on there. But all of those things still ring definitely true. So no, I think that's good. It changes, but all of that's pretty much the same. So yeah,
It's always the way with the internet, isn't it? It's pretty much like once it's posted, it's outdated already. Damn it.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why you got to just pick and choose, what you're going to get worried about.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Pick the battles.
Yeah.
So Emily, for you, where does your story start? What got you into the position of where you are and helping people the way that you do?
Yeah, it's always a hard one when people ask about your story, because you're like, it's so, I always find it a challenge to pick out which parts of your story are relevant, but I guess for kind of doing what I do now, working with female entrepreneurs and working with them in their businesses, I look back and the threads were always kind of there for that. I studied business at university. I was always kind of interested in business and that kind of thing. And then always really interested in health and wellness. And that's kind of how I started in my business, was working with women in wellness. But I worked in finance for a while, worked on super yachts. I au paired in Italy. I did lots of random things as well. And then it was my father passed away when I was about 24 and I was living in Sydney. And I think it was just one of those times where you just go, okay, what is it all about? What is it all for? What's really important to me? And that's when I moved back home to New Zealand, and I learned to surf. I surfed every day for 3 weeks, badly, but but it was awesome. Exactly. And just kind of really took the time to figure out, what do I want to do? And I don't think I was really that conscious of it then, but obviously looking back, that was kind of what that was about. And I actually got involved in network marketing. That was how I got into business, because I knew I wanted something for myself. I knew I wanted some freedom, and that was always really important to me. And that was just sort of showed up through a family friend, and I got involved in that. And that was when I first got into coaching people, working with them on their businesses, building a team, speaking, those kinds of things, all of those opportunities that kind of came into my path that I now use in my business. But I always kind of knew that wasn't the thing. It was just that inkling of this isn't really the thing. And then eventually, after 2 years of, ignoring the little whisper saying this isn't it, I ended up in New York at an event, and in that moment just decided I'm just going to do it. I knew I kind of wanted something different, but I didn't know what it looked like. And I just made the decision to just try to figure it out, because I was just so scared. And I was like, I'm just not going to let fear be the reason why I don't do this anymore. And I'm just going to throw myself into it. And so that's where Conscious Boss was born. And from there, it's just kind of, it's not been a straight line, but that was where it was kind of birthed.
I think those live events, they're pretty interesting. There's definitely two types of people who go there. There's the people who are scared that don't do anything, the people who are scared who go away and actually make some shit happen afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and sometimes
leap.
you have to be the person that goes and does nothing until you eventually go to one, and then you're like, okay, no, now I'm really going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like
definitely.
there's a divine timing in all of that as well. Like sometimes it might not be the right time for you. It's just like all those little things are laying the seed, laying the foundation, and then when things do feel like the right time, it will just happen.
100%.
Actually, something awesome that you said in your TED talk. I mean, lots of awesome things, but there was something that I noticed about the not worrying about the how.
Yeah.
So just believe and know what you want, so that then you just kind of let that unfold. Was that what happened for you at that time when you jumped into that fear?
Yeah, because I think that's one of the biggest things, and I said this at the event as well when it was asked, like, what's the biggest thing holding people back, and it's like this obsession that we have with certainty, and like certainty is like the how. It's like, how is that going to happen? How am I going to get there? How is this going to work out? And it's like a lot of that isn't actually our territory, and it's like and even sometimes knowing what you want, like it doesn't have to be that 100% where you're going or 100% what it looks like, but it's like that inkling of like, I know that I want more, I know it could be something different, and I'm just going to lean into that, because I think that we can get really stuck with like, okay, I need to know exactly where I'm going, and I need to know how I'm going to get there, and most of the time we don't even know either of those things. So it's like, and that was the thing with me, it was like I was waiting for the confidence, I was waiting for the certainty, I was waiting for what Z was going to be, and I was like not even on A yet, right? And it's like those answers don't come until you just start like being willing to like put your foot forward. So yeah, for me, for sure, the how is something that I've just more and more just learned to surrender, because especially as a Capricorn, type A, quite naturally desired to control things. You guys are nodding your head like you kind of know what I'm talking about.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're peas in a pod, Emily, you and me.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's like that's been one of my eternal life lessons, is just like how much more can I trust that like this is going to work out, and that I just keep getting to chase what really feels aligned for me, and know that it will pan out how it should.
Mm-hmm.
And what tips would you give to some of the listeners, and maybe the person sitting opposite from you, if they're not even, like, they're searching and they know there's something bigger and they get that feeling, but they're not sure what first step to take to figure out even what is that thing?
Totally. I mean, I can absolutely relate. I'm in that same space with myself right now. Like I'm got big transitions coming for me, for my business, for what I want to do, but I'm totally in the gray of like what that's going to look like. Like I don't know. And so it's like, for me, it's like, I'm also kind of surrendering to know that like, I think it really comes with like self-reflection. I think you have to know kind of the stage you're in. For example, for me right now, I'm in a stage of like a little bit of rest and recalibration before I figure a lot of it out. So I'm not in like a place where I'm like really trying to map it out and figure it, make the big plan. I'm kind of in the space of like seeing what's showing up while still taking action. So for example, I was at an event last Thursday and a couple of people sat down next to us, and the conversation, who they were and what they did, I knew was something that was like, hold on, this is something that I know I'm really interested in. What's next? Mm-hmm. And so I was like, there's something here. You just sat down next to me for a reason. So like, that's a relationship that I've now built. I just went and met with that person yesterday, and it's still so great. Like I was sitting opposite the person being like, I actually don't know, but there's something in this that like could be something. So I think it's just really paying attention to those little opportunities that you have that come across your path that just spark you a little bit. Because it's like, again, you don't have to know necessarily, but if you're getting that little spark, and I think you really do have to be observant for like, and assertive, you know, to be like, hold on, there's something in this. Maybe there's going to be one little thing in this conversation I'm going to have with this person that's going to open me up to something I didn't even see before. So I think it's
the same thing happened to me at your guys' event.
Oh, cool.
I sat down next to a lady who runs a yoga studio just around the corner from here, and I'm a yoga teacher. And that's not the thing, and it's still grey, but we've actually communicated since, and we're trying to figure out why we've been connected.
Yeah. Yes. And that's the thing, like it's all those little things. I mean, I'm such a massive believer in relationships. I think that everything that we create is just like forged off of and out of, you know, our relationships. And so it's just, I think really, again, trusting, like knowing that there's that space, and like when the time is right for you to figure it out, it will become clear. But that also doesn't mean just kick back and like just wait for it to rock up on your doorstep, you know. Like I think that's a distinction that we have to clarify. You know, you've got to go to the events, you've got to put yourself in the place of like these opportunities and things that are like interesting you, to allow that to like kind of come through. Yeah,
I went to a business course earlier this year, and the guy who was running it, he's like, how do you become the cow that provides the milk and then make your farmers go and do the rest of it? He's like, you want to be a human with opposable thumbs, like a person that cannot actually do that much.
A cow.
But a person with opposable thumbs. So it's like someone who will do just the thing that they're best at, and then build a team around them to make sure that they're doing the rest of the things that have to happen. I mean, obviously, in the beginning stages, that's quite a tough thing to have. That is a little bit hard to try and build. For you, like, did you start in the network marketing and kind of moved into this realm a little bit more? Did you start by yourself, and what does the progression of your team look like now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's one of those things as well where it's like, even when you have a team, like obviously you want to just be doing the things that you're so good at, but then it's also like understanding that obviously just in life, like just in business, there's always going to be some stuff that like you're going to have to do that you're not going to love. Like I think that's also being, realistic about some of that. But for me, it was interesting this year. My team kind of grew. At one point I had about 5 people, and it was just contractors, like no one full-time or anything. But it was an interesting journey for me because it felt very like, a part of it was just keeping up and like scaling and things like that. But then it was interesting. I felt myself getting into a bit of an ego place about it, where I was like, the team's got, 5 people now, whatever. And it's like, it was just an interesting thing to be like, and what does that really mean? Like, is that actually the best thing for me? Is that the best thing for the business? And it turned out that like it wasn't. So there's certain people that, it's just literally me and my assistant now. And it's perfect. I'm actually really enjoying the small team that does a lot of things that I don't need to do. She helps me a lot, like helps me run the business 100%. But it was just interesting to even check in with like that driver for like, because I think it's really easy in business to do that. Like, oh, I want to make this much money because it looks like this or sounds like this, or I need to have this many team because this is what it means, And I think it's just super important to check in with that. And it turned out we had people that weren't really being like effective, but I think for sure, I think that like as soon as you can though, getting like at least an assistant in some way, because usually us as the entrepreneurs, the creators with the ideas, it's just not very good at that. So it's like they do become essential to just even grow the business at all, because like I couldn't run my business without my assistant, really.
I think a good thing to point out there is that they probably give you focus in regards to what you should be actually looking at, rather than the 1,000 things that you've probably got on your mind. It's like, okay, how do you narrow that focus in every day?
Yeah, and you don't also have to have like, people come on forever. For example, like the great thing about the businesses that we have and about the way people are doing business now is you can have contractors. So you can have someone come in. I had someone work with me for 6 months, completely revolutionize my business and systems and processes. And then it was, not necessary that they were in the business anymore, but my business was in a way better spot. So I think that it's really important, even if you just need to do that for short-term things and help you get set up. Because, I was just having a conversation with someone this morning about my bookkeeper and, saying to her, she's an ex-accountant. And I was like, do you think I should learn this? Like, do you think I should be in here and learning the Xero and doing all the things? And she's like, no, just pay the person, because it's going to take you all of this time and you're probably going to do it wrong. And you have to pay her. And I think that's kind of, sometimes it can be scary it's always scary making that leap to like invest in anyone in the team, but it's like really knowing that like that's going to free you up to create revenue and to have ideas and be way better at doing that job that you would have to try to do.
It's also like a good thing to think of as your effective hourly rate. And it's like, if you're doing that stuff that you could pay someone $20 to do, it means that your effective hourly rate drops down to $20 or less an hour. And it's like, well, could you actually be doing more valuable things for the business rather than just doing some book work? And it's like, okay. And I think it's also
an integral part of the business.
Yeah. There's also figuring out the level of, is it that important to you right now or not? And can you afford to actually put someone else in that position or not?
Yeah, and I think it's really important to note as well that it's like, it's not that you just get to this place where all of a sudden you're just like rolling in cash and like, oh, it's time to hire someone. It's like you kind of it's more that you get to a point where you're like, I can mentally and emotionally and physically like not grow the business anymore. Like I was drowning in admin when I first hired my very first assistant, because I was like, I cannot bring anything else into this business. And I think it's like, it was still so scary to like bring someone in. So I think it's just important to know, like, it's still going to be a scary situation, but like you have to just look at, like you said, can you afford not to do it, like with where you're wanting to get to.
And so when you first launched your coaching business, you said you went from 20,000 to 200,000 in 10 months. How did that progression? Dollars.
Dollars, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that progression look?
Yeah, so that was, I have to point out, that was not when I first started. So
Okay.
I first started very, very end of, because I like to be really clear with that, because it's like, it wasn't like 10 months after I very first started Conscious Boss, because I think that that's important to know that there's like momentum that gets built for that to happen. So I very first started Conscious Boss like November 2015, which was literally like putting Instagrams out, putting Facebooks out, which I'm embarrassed when I look at them now, but like that was all that the business was back then. And then it was, 2016, I did like around about 20K, and then last year I did the big jump. And I think it was obviously like a number of things. I think momentum. I invested like in a pretty serious coach at that time. It was when I launched my boot camp, which was kind of taking me out of like the one-on-one space, and I also really, really got clear as to like who it was I worked with, what I did, like who my clients were, like what their offering really was, and just nailed down on that. And it was also, like it was funny because I left New Zealand to travel because I was like, nobody in New Zealand gets what I do, and then like just kind of ran away to like, greener pastures. But, and then it kind of took off before I did. So I think it was just like that it's time for the momentum, and also just like, I was putting in a lot of work. The mentor, I think, helped a lot, investing in the business, systemizing it a little bit, but also just kind of creating that offering that actually allowed me the space to even generate that amount of money, because it's a lot harder to generate that off like one-on-one clients than like off a group, for example. So that was when I launched kind of my group stuff.
That's awesome. And you've worked with some big names in mentors, Tony Robbins, Gabrielle Bernstein, or Bernstein, depending on who you speak to, and Dr. John Demartini. That's amazing. And I guess we could talk about each of those for the length of the podcast. So maybe we'll just go like, what are your biggest takeaways from working with each of those?
Yeah. I mean, I've always been obsessed with like personal development. I think it really started, my brother was a coach, and he was like always into a lot of this stuff. He got me into all of this kind of thing. And, we went to Tony Robbins after my dad passed away, and I did Date with Destiny. And what did I get out of him? I mean, Tony Robbins I was always in awe of, and it was like, oh my gosh, like from back in the day. And I think one of the things that I got from him now looking back was like, was actually understanding that, one of the exercises is like everything that we do, essentially underneath it is that our desire for love, right? So like that, it's like our drivers, significance and everything we do, but actually understanding that, everything that we're doing is really to create love in our life. So that was kind of, something I remember now. I don't know if that's what I took away then. I don't think it was. But yeah, he was just pretty amazing for me at that time. Demartini was, again, just kind of really looking at like how you're living your life, the needs. A lot of it is so similar, really, and I think it really depends on where you are at the time that you take it. Gabrielle Bernstein for me was the program that I made my big decision in. So that was my program in New York, where I was just like, I'm done, no more fear, I'm going at it. So that was very uneloquent answers for what I really got from them. But I think it was just staying in that vortex, like staying in that vortex around people in that environment to continue to be inspired, I think has always been the big thing for me.
Definitely. That's so cool.
I think you're so correct in regards to saying like it's whoever you gel with at that time, and the things that they say at that time that you're just like, oh wow, like that's such an aha moment. I mean, we've both seen that in the fitness realm where we're coaching someone, and either we say something to them, they're like, oh my God, I just got that. It's like, well, the coach has been saying that to you for the last 3 years.
Yes.
Like, how did you only just understand it? But it's just might be the different,
they're ready to hear it.
Yeah, exactly, or the different way that it's said. And I mean, it's quite a powerful thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Time and place.
Yeah, and you're a different person at different times. You're going to need different messages,
And so for you, were you ever in a corporate role? Were you someone who was just kind of 9 to 5, not enjoying your life because of work?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always worked really hard. So like at university, I had a job since I was about, 15 or whatever, back when you used to get paid like $7 an hour or something. It makes me feel like I'm from the 50s or something. So it's such a small amount of money. And then like at uni, I had like, 2 jobs. I was living in Australia, I had like 3 jobs. Like I was just always really pretty hardworking. But yeah, when I was living in Sydney working a corporate job was when I was working at a bank, and like we were down by the water, and it was like, I said I was in finance, but basically I was just like pushing paper around, like totally irrelevant job. And, right down on Darling Harbour and looking out on the water and just going, just people like enjoying their life and swanning around in the day and just going, is this really it? So for sure I've been there, and it's like, I can't even fathom to myself now really like having to be somewhere at a certain time and like, you know, just it's crazy to me. I'm like, oh my God, but we did that. Like that's the mainstream lifestyle. But so yeah, I have been in that.
And so for you, I mean, making the shift, that's probably the biggest thing that people do struggle with. And it's like you were saying, like, what do you do? What are the steps you take? But I guess mentally and emotionally for you, what were the steps you had to take first?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was essentially like climbing the corporate ladder in the bank. So I was like meeting all the right people, being, you know, had the meeting with like, you know, the chief foreign exchange officer or something. Because like my dream when I was younger was to be a CEO of a multinational corporation. And then I just realized paper's just probably going to be like a bigger desk and like more paper, you know, and I just realized I didn't want that job, so I didn't want mine, you know. So it's like I think firstly like having a look like where are you actually going, and do you even want to get there, and if you don't want to get there then you probably don't want to be where you are now. So I think that was like a crystal clear moment for me where I was like, okay, well that's done. And obviously with my father passing away, it nudged me to kind of come back home. And, you know, I was like 27 at home, broke, living at home, you know, like that was what I had to do to figure it out. And obviously not everybody can do that, but I've also worked all the time up until I was at the point where I had to leave, you know, my job. So I worked temp jobs. And I think that's something that people really need to like, no, it's like you have to put in the work and you have to do both until you can do one, you know. It's like I was taking calls at the morning, you know, 7 a.m. in my car, doing live streams in my car, taking calls on my lunch break, like taking calls after work. Like that was what I had to do to like make money and try and build my business, you know. And so it's like you can't be afraid of like working to make it work, you know.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think that like the traveling for you to start off with really helped your business as well? Like it's almost like I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you're almost seen as a bigger thing because you're over in Australia as this New Zealand coach. And it's like, oh my God, this lady's incredible. Whereas if you're to deliver it maybe at your hometown, they're like, oh, she's just from here. Like, what's the big deal? Sort of thing. Like, does that make sense? I guess without.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I definitely think that plays a part because, yeah, you know, I think a lot of the brand is like, you know, people perceive, and especially with social media and stuff, people do perceive that kind of thing. They're like, oh, wow, because a lot of people want to travel and a lot of people want to do that. So if somebody's doing that as well, they're like, oh, wow, that person's doing that. How did they do that? You know, so it's kind of people desire to create that. So it's another thing that people are like, oh, she's also doing that. So I think for sure. And I think also for me, it's just like, you know, I'm stimulated and excited and having adventures and like, you know, that stems and fuels the business as well. But I think definitely from perception standpoint, it does add to, you know, oh, she's in America and oh, she's in Australia, you know. But yeah, in Auckland, like literally I was doing an event in Auckland after my Sydney one that sold out with like 83 people and I had like 3 people buy tickets here. And I was like, okay. And then it was just like not the right time for me to be doing the event. So it was perfect. But I was like, oh, interesting. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the other places that you've been to for different reasons, Tanzania and Uganda or Uganda, depending on who's pronouncing it. So that was for some more charitable or philanthropic work. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. That was that was last year when I kind of set off on the big, all right, I'm going to go overseas and do some things. And it just kind of was one of those things again that lined up. Like after I said yes to going away, it was like an opportunity to go. So my friend Alexi, who you saw speak as well at the event, she started a charity called Epic, and they were going on their trip to go out there. So and there was another couple of spaces, and I was like, yeah, amazing, that would be awesome. So we went out there for 3 weeks, and you go into the villages and hang out with the kids, and you're drilling for clean water in these villages, these remote villages. And it was such a beautiful experience, and one of those things that you really see how happy you can be with nothing, you know, like, and the community like spirit of these African women, like it's moving, and it was just one of the most beautiful things, and just such a great reminder, you know. I think we all get so swept up with needing more and creating more, and just like stripping it back was such a beautiful thing to do.
Because you speak a lot about living consciously, and I guess going and doing these things where you're giving back to people who didn't really ask for your help but really need it. That is a very conscious way of living, and being aware of that. And I guess something else that I took away from your TED Talk was that everybody can do something. But what if somebody is in that space of still believing that their voice doesn't matter, and like how can they start to do even just one thing? Like what is something easy that somebody can do to start to help somebody else and give that service?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, and I mean, you know, there's anything from like literally going, you know, helping someone with their groceries at a supermarket, or there's literally going and finding a local charity and volunteering. There's, you know, putting something on, you know, going to your local retirement village. Like, what I think the biggest thing is actually thinking about what moves you. I think that's the biggest thing, because it's like, you know, for example, just like me sharing, you know, I shared a message today just about settling and about certain areas of my life that like I was challenged by, that like, you know, body image and like all of this other stuff. And it's like, the more people that share that, like I get moved by people that are like changing the world in a way that relates to them. Like, for example, because I just said body image, like Ashley Graham, for example, right, is like this beautiful plus size model that like the world's never seen before, and it's completely changing like the world's idea of like beauty, and that's helping millions and millions of people. And that's her being willing to like use her voice, commit to what's important to her, and that's making massive change a lot like across the world, right? That might feel superficial, but that's actually a massive thing that affects so many women. So I think it's really thinking about what moves you, like what breaks you. You know, I said that in my TED Talk, it's like what really breaks your heart? Where do you want to create an impact? And then using that as the way for you to like enter into that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find that there is like a common theme or a common story that women that you deal with are telling themselves or dealing with constantly that stops them from progressing forward?
Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting one because, you know, obviously I work a lot in New Zealand and Australia, but then also the States, and it's like there can be a relatively different, you know, energy. Well, we have tall poppy, obviously, in Australia and New Zealand, right, where it's like you're not supposed to shine too much or be too bright and all of those things. And there is, you know, the global trends of like a guy will go for a job if he's like got 60% of the qualifications, and a woman will need like 90 or whatever. And so that shows up the same in business or in anything. It's like our desire to like have everything and be fully ready and have all of that before we put our hand up or our foot out. And so especially when it comes to business, it's like a lot of this like, who am I to do this? Like, why would people want to listen to me? I don't know enough. You know, people are going to judge me because, this big who am I conversation. And again, that obsession with certainty, like how is it all going to work out? How am I going to get there? What are people going to think? You know, a lot of it is just this fear of like judgment from other people. Instead of just jumping in and being like, fuck it, I'm going to, you know, give it a
go.
Yeah.
And I guess like having a social media following and being able to connect with people, it's a common thing these days. You know, it's a way to reach people when you are sitting at home working pretty much with a small team of you and one other. Yeah. How much of an impact does social media have in comparison to your face-to-face interactions and workshops?
Yeah, I think that the social media thing is such a beautiful tool for connection. And I think it's just like that's what it's for. It's for connection and relationships, you know, like everybody on the other end is a person. That's essentially what it's there for you just to connect with more people. And so I think it's like, it's when it's used in that way, it's like nothing will ever, in my opinion, ever beat in person. Like there's just no substitute for like, if we were sitting down and actually in person having a conversation right now, like it would be like, this is amazing, but like it would just be a whole next level, you know, because we'd be able to be in the energy and all of that. Like and so online is beautiful for that, but you can never replace offline. So it's like, I think it's a really beautiful facilitator to build relationships, and whenever you can take them offline, you know, like I do lots of meetups and things like that, because it's like anytime I can get in the space with people, it's just that next level. And I think people are so starved for community and real life connection that social media is amazing, but also just using it to actually build relationships so that you can like go, hey, okay, who's in my area? Like maybe look for hashtags of people that are following, like reach out, see where people are, and like actually bring that offline. Like I've met one of my best friends who came to one of my events and like hashtagged her photo, and like she just moved here from New York, and then like she's now one of my best friends, you know, and so many stories like that. So it's like take it off and really build a relationship when you can. That's what I think social is really for.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah,
it actually is the networking service I think it was built to be, rather than the thing to hide behind, which I think a lot of people do. It's like, well, I'll only show my happy side rather than all of me.
The smoke and mirrors.
100%. Yeah, and I think that that's really important for people to like get really discerning about what they're indulging in on social too, because it's like, what it's like. You can look at something, then all of a sudden just feel so shit about yourself, and you have to be, really discerning around like the story that you're making up and how you're engaging with it too. And follow accounts that actually make you feel good,
Yeah.
Do a regular cull if needed.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
Before you did actually talk about tall poppy syndrome, and I think it comes out a lot on social media, in particular in New Zealand and Australia, because it doesn't seem to happen very much overseas. What do you kind of do or help your people to kind of do to get around the tall poppy syndrome?
I think one of the biggest things, and like with anything, but the biggest thing is making sure that you're surrounded by people that are like in the same lane as you, up to the same things as you, like, because the thing is that you're going to get hits, like being out there, being seen, creating stuff, like you're going to take hits. There's things that are going to come. Have to be around people that are taking those same hits, so that you're like, when they're like, I've had countless times where I've had to call friends that are in the same space and just like, this just happened, and they're like, oh yeah, well of course that's what happens, and you're just like, oh. But if you're with people that like just totally don't get it, then they're like, oh my god, that's terrible, and how can you deal with that, and like completely changes like how you feel about what's happened. So I think your community is massive, and people that are like, just out there doing things. So you're like, oh, well, they're doing it. So, and then I think it's really just doing it and having the, like so much of it is doing the thing, having the experience of the thing and realizing that you're okay. You actually have to have the experience and be like, oh, but I'm still good. Okay, I survived. I moved past it. But for sure, your environment, because you still have to have those people where you're like, what the fuck, this happened, and and have them talk you like off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah, I think the first time's always the hardest, right?
Yeah, of course. And I think I'm a big believer that like you don't get sent anything you're not ready for. So I feel like I only started having like, some of the things that happen in business like further down my track when I was really ready for it, when I was super committed to the business. And I think the universe just like gives you that grace. It's like you're not going to get anything that's going to fully knock you off unless you let it too early on. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's, you kind of get that grace. But for sure, your environment is massive.
It's that whole thing, like what you're focusing on really does come to front.
Yeah.
To front
what you think about expands.
Yeah.
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember when I've had certain things in my business where like I've been totally written off for like 2 days, and then like now the same thing will happen, and I'm like, all right, I'll just give it to my assistant, like manage that, I'm done. Like I'm not even getting emotionally involved in it, because it's like you've done it and you realize that's just what it is, and you just can't do things. You just can't do something about everything,
Yeah.
You can only do.
I totally agree with what you said about the universe only hands you what you're ready for. But I also think that it depends on what mindset you're in, because you're definitely in the Victor mindset of you take everything that comes into your life as a lesson, you find the silver lining, you use it for growth. Like you can't fail because all the challenges allow you to develop. Yeah. Whereas if somebody's in a victim mindset, I definitely think, like you said, that they let themselves be knocked by that thing. So definitely looking at like where your head's at with a lot of this stuff and choosing to look at it in a different view.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly probably you just nailed it there in what you said with choosing, because I think that it's like ultimately it is a choice to believe and act and decide in certain ways. Like it's not that like I was gifted with some gene of like, oh, you will only receive blessings and like everything you feel will be good. It's like that didn't happen. Like I had to make that my reality. You know what I mean? Because it's like, when I was in that controlling mindset of like, I need to figure everything out, and if it's going to happen, it's up to me, and like, what if that didn't work, and like that whole mindset, and like, oh, it didn't work out, what did I not do, like, that whole thing, like that's very tiring, overwhelming, very anxiety inducing, like burnout provoking way to live. And it's like I just got to the point where I was like, I can't do that anymore. And you just slowly over time do what you need to do to cultivate that mentality. Like you have to cultivate it, and so I think it's like if you're not enjoying the way that you're experiencing your life, then you get to choose something different, like, and it's going to take a little bit of effort on your part, but like that's still your choice.
Totally.
Adversity can definitely break or shape you. It's like hopefully it's shaping you and leading you in the right direction.
100%. And sometimes it might feel like it's breaking you, but like it's still like recently I just felt like I got broken, but it's kind of broken me open to like this whole new way of being. But when I was in it, it was like, what the F is going on? But it also like made me really lean into a lot more like spirituality and look at my life in a different way and like figure out how to be in that. And I feel better than ever. But at the time, I didn't, and so it's again just like trusting, so much of it is just trusting that like what's showing up for you is showing up for you,
Yeah, definitely. So with Conscious Boss, like what happens in Conscious Boss? What do people come to you for, and how do you progress them?
Yeah, what is the Conscious Boss secret sauce? So basically I work with women that are at like early stage coaching, consulting businesses, and then now I'm actually working with them that are a little further on, that kind of have a brand in the business, and we just kind of scale and just leveraging that onto like building the team and scaling the business. And so much of it is like, a lot of it honestly is community. Like a lot of it is connecting more women together that are like really, really supportive, that are, a big part of Conscious Boss has always been about collaboration and community. So it's like there's the relationships that get built in this space are like really, really beautiful and empowering. So it's a big, big part of it. And a lot of it is just mindset. Like I always say to my clients and the girls, just like, I don't really sit there and teach. Obviously I teach strategy, but like, it's not that it's like about you must do this and then do this and do this. It's like my main intention is to really have them become cultivated into the person that no matter what happens, you're just going to get up and keep going. You know what I mean? Like if you like so committed to the vision, but building the character so that like, because you can learn strategies, but if they don't work, then what happens? It's like, but if you become the person, like I'm not it's not strategies that I imply, but it's like I'm now the person that I will make it happen no matter what. So my intention is really to build that more so than just like, here's the 6-step process. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's a better thing to teach, right? Like that's lifestyle and changing the way that they think about things compared to like, follow the 6-step process and you'll have success. It never quite falls out to be that way.
Totally. Yeah. But if you're the person, then you're just like, well, I'm going to figure it out anyway. So, so that's usually my intention.
And from what I can tell, you're a pretty busy lady. You've got a lot going on. Or I don't like that word busy, but full. You've got a very full life, and there's a lot going on. So, you're writing blogs and recording podcasts and videos, and you've got your coaching clients and you're traveling. Obviously, to some degree, it's going to need to be scheduled. How much of that do you plan, and how much do you let go with the flow?
Good question.
I feel like this has changed since you first started. But.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because I literally wrote my first blog in probably 2 years the other day because I write newsletters and stuff, and I'm like, I should put this on my website so that at least like living there instead of just floating out of an inbox. And that's one of the things I've always struggled with. So I am, even though I'm like a type A Capricorn kind of girl, like I also really love freedom. So like I've always felt quite restricted by like schedules. And it's at a point. Yeah, so I go in and out. Right now, I'm like in a very floaty end of year space, which is really delicious. So I'm like not super structured, but it goes in and out. I'm more spontaneous than structured, I will say, when it comes to like content and things like that. Like I kind of go with like, oh, this feels good right now, so I'm going to put it out. Like I like to, even when I'm in launches, we'll like do all of our sales emails, but I'll still like want to edit them the day of because I'm like, well, this is something that's like come up for me right now that I want to share. So I'm more spontaneous than structured. But I am working on, the consistency piece, the structure piece. It just hasn't quite fully clicked in yet.
It's a progression.
But it's also quite a challenge. This is my story anyway. It's quite a challenge, like when I move around a lot, because it's like I'm in different time zones and different schedules and things like that. So it's actually like I don't have, this full tilt of time. But that's just a cop-out excuse as well.
One thing that we call our holidays a lot is actually a creative reset, because it's that chance to actually get away, and it almost puts you back into like wanting routine again. But I think you have to set the intention before you actually go, otherwise it doesn't work because you're just like, oh, I'll go away on holiday. But I think that just taking a little bit of time, either at the end of each week or at the end of every few months, can be just so powerful if you actually do set an intention to it. Because so many people are so busy now. It's like we're always just on our phones or on our email or talking to people on the phone, whatever it might be. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, so I'm so busy scrolling Instagram. but it's true, and I think that it's when I was in Greece earlier in the year with some friends having a holiday, and when I actually realized, I was like, I actually haven't had a holiday for like, I don't know, like 2 years. Because it's like when you blur everything in together, you don't get, like, I love that phrase, like a creative reset. You don't get it because you're just, everything's kind of, you're kind of doing everything all the time. And then you're really just burning out kind of thing. And Alexi said to me, this quote, and it was like, I can do 12 months of work in 9, but not in 12. And it's like that context of like, we can actually do more in less time if we take the rest and the breaks and the play and the fun, but not if you just keep burning, because you actually, like, I've burnt out twice this year already. And that's why I was like, my brother said to me, he's like, you're not listening. Like, the universe is trying to tell you something. What you're doing is not working.
Yeah. And traveling for work is still work.
Yeah.
It's fun and you're passionate about it, but it's still giving. It's not giving that chance to recharge and get ready to do it again.
I think a big thing you just brought up is like actually listening to your body as well, right? Like those days when you just don't feel like working, you probably should. It's like maybe that's the reason why we're given sick days for those who live in the corporate world.
Yeah.
Like even though you're not sick, and I was the biggest person for this when I was actually working. I'd never take a sick day because I was like, oh no, I'm not sick. I'm not properly sick. Whereas it's like if you had that, you'd probably come back fresher and do better for your business or for your community that you're already a part of. Like taking that sick day is so much more valuable than not having it.
Oh my God, 100%. And I think that, like, I've really realized that over this year is just how wise, and you guys know you're in health and fitness, how wise our bodies are. It's like they are such a friggin' powerhouse of like knowledge and wisdom, but it's like we just override it. Like, no, I'm going to smash it today and I'm going to do it. But your body's like, no, bitch. Like, sorry, I don't know if this is like explicit podcast, but it's like, you know, you have to just actually allow that, and you will come back better. But yeah, if you just keep overriding it, like, it's going to get you. You have like a limited amount of energy, like, to give to things, you know, if you don't actually like stop. So I think and that I was always so scared to do that because I was like, if I stop, it means everything's going to go backwards, you know. It's like completely the other way around.
It does seem like a challenging, it does seem like a really challenging lesson for people to learn, no matter how old they are. Like even, you know, grandparents still struggle with this concept of they don't stop until they're forced to rest. Whereas something we've been trialing is actually once we start to get the signals of becoming sick, we'll stop and slow down and still get the work done that like is time sensitive, but just back off from the bigger projects. And we actually don't develop a full sickness, and then we can keep going without ending up in hospital.
It was
crazy, right?
I was talking to a friend the other day who is like he owns his own business, and I was like, oh, why don't you get some of the other guys just to fill in for you? He's like, oh, no, I don't have anyone else. I'm like, well, is it really a business then, or is it just a job that you created for yourself? If you can't, like, what happens if you're sick, or what happens if, because you're so run down, you go into a 3-month sickness? Like, what is actually going to happen? Like, you're not leaving a legacy, or you're just creating a job. Really, it's just all it's become. So it's like, how for people like that who have the story of, well, maybe people aren't going to do as well as me, and it goes back to what you were saying before about like letting go and actually not having control. What do you do with that? Like, how do you work with those people?
I think it's like you have to, and it's funny because when I worked with someone earlier in the year, they were like, social media is something that she's like, I disagree, you can outsource that. And I was like, like, because that feels like something that's very much like, you know, me and an extension of me. And I think it depends on which stage of business you're at, like what you want to give out. Like, yes, it might be that no one's going to care about your business as much as you, but also if someone's like operating, like for example, my amazing assistant, like she's helping me run my business right now. Like she's more on top of it than me right now because I'm just like in this like floaty space and she's kind of keeping things alive. And so she's going to be doing that better than I am for sure, even though like maybe I would have been doing it differently. Like she's on top of things. So I think it's really just, again, like a lot of it is trusting, but also just seeing like, okay, what would be a part that you could let go of now? And I think you have to, once you can experience that trust of like letting go, and again, it's like realizing, oh, things still work. Actually, wow, they work better. So, and giving you that opportunity to free up more like emotional and creative space to drive revenue or whatever it is, you know, that's going to make that person feel good. But again, I think it's just like anything, it's the trying it and figuring it out, you know, and getting the lesson. Like it might be that like you decide that didn't work the way that you did it, but you're going to still get something that you can implement next time or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, my advice for most things is just do it. Take the action, and then you know what I mean, because it's
deal
like
with the consequences later.
There's so much like forward before the action we can really like put into it. You know?
I was actually just thinking the conversation over again. He was telling me that he didn't have the time to put into someone else because he just gets it done faster. And I'm like, that's so backwards, because you do it for a month or 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden you've got double the workload. Like you're able to take on double the workload. Yeah.
Yes, that's a big one, and that's I think one of those like false beliefs in terms of like just hiring someone is going to instantly make things better. It actually, you do have to do front end work with someone when you hire someone, and I think that's why people don't do it. But it's like someone who I worked with earlier in the year to help me with my hiring and stuff was like, you want to hire when you are like, not when you're trying to put a fire out, you know? So you want to hire when you're in a good space, when you actually have the room and the capacity to bring someone on slowly and do it properly, as opposed to just like, I really need someone, and like throwing them in and thinking that they're going to figure it out, because it's like people need to be trained. And one thing I will say that like anyone who's like at an early stage business or like pre-assistant or anything, a really good thing that you can do is anything that you're doing in your business, if it's like, especially if it's on, well, mostly only if it's online, is like just create a Google document in your Google Drive, like your G Drive, and there's a software called Loom, and you can do screen records. So just screen record every time you send a newsletter. You guys can screen record when you like emailed out to podcast people, when you upload the email. All of those little things are going to start like creating standard operating procedures for you, so that when someone comes in, you at least have some stuff and you can say, okay, test project is for you to like create this standard operating procedure for us, you know. But you're starting to like accumulate things, because one of the things when people go to hire is they're like, I don't know what the fuck to give someone, because you actually
I've got no systems.
Stuff. Yeah, and you like forget what you even do on a day-to-day basis. You're like, I don't even know what to give you.
It's all in my head.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to do, just to kind of start building like that up.
Definitely. Something that came to mind when you were talking before was that starting with something small, because you said just get them to do it, and that's so awesome. And if somebody is still scared and not ready to take that leap, like just get them to do something small and then see the benefits of that. It doesn't have to be a massive thing to start with.
Yeah, it might be cleaning your office space because you don't want to have to clean. Like that might be the first thing that you outsource.
Totally. And that's the thing. If it's something that's taking up your energetic or emotional space, like whatever feels like the most comfortable discomfort for you, because it's still going to be uncomfortable to do that, but yeah.
So, I mean, with I guess people in general, what are kind of your steps to success? Like, hey, let's knock down this wall and let's start to do this thing.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, one of the biggest things for me is action. Honestly, I think action it sounds so simplistic, but it's like, it's true. I mean, so many of us are waiting for like the perfect person, the perfect time, the perfect solution, the perfect everything before we actually like put our foot in the game. And it's like, you might not even know that where you're wanting to go right. Well, it's unlikely even that where you think you want to go now is where you're going to want to be going in like 6 months time or 6 actions from now or whatever it is. So it's like, get in the game and actually like just really give yourself the opportunity to experience it, to go, oh, this is it or this isn't it, because that's the only way you're going to like know which direction you want to keep going in. So I would say that pretty much before anything. And then for me, environment and relationships is massive. So like, who are you surrounded by? Who are the people in your life? Who are you being supported by? Like, who are you around on a regular basis? Because that alone is going to change everything. Because it's like, you know, if we hang out and we're talking about things, like we're going to have a very different mentality than like if we want to hang out with people that like are, you know, hating their life, hating their jobs, hating their families, unhealthy, like all of those things, that becomes your reality. So it's like, if you just up level who you're spending your time with on a regular basis and people that you have in your corner, everything has to shift, just because that's the only way that it can. It's like, you're going to rise up there. So that is like massive. You know, your mindset's going to shift, your habits are going to shift, your expectations on reality are going to shift, your behaviors are going to shift, your community is obviously shifting. So that is huge. So taking action and curating your environment and relationships. I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to leave it there.
No, that's cool. And I think like sometimes people have the issue with even actually just starting that action. And that's something that I heard a long time ago, something that we do in fitness a lot is like, hey, take 2 breaths and then go, or count yourself down like from 5 or 3 and then go. Like, it's like, just put something in place that every time that you're like, oh, maybe I don't want to, 3, 2, 1, okay, and you have to go. Like, setting something like that up just can be so powerful as well, because it's like, hey, how do you make this action happen? Well, you put an action to it.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things, Tony Robbins used to say, it's like, don't ever leave the side of a goal without taking some action towards its attainment. So maybe it's like, hey, I want to like be a speaker or something. So it's like, okay, where's the local Toastmasters? Who's someone I might pike out on myself. So who's someone I can try to enroll to come with me? Make the plan, make the date. Like, there it is. It's in the diary. Like, like just little things like that, because it's like attending events that you would like to speak at. Like, those are the little things that we have to start doing if we ever want to get to like being a speaker or being whatever it is. So I think, getting some accountability, like that was big for me. And like accountability, I don't need accountability now. Like, I'm accountable to myself. But when I first started, I did need accountability, because you're not committed and you're not like really enrolled in your own vision, because you don't have, it doesn't feel real yet, because it's like, well, this isn't really a thing because I have no results. Yeah. So I think accountability at the beginning is really, really important. So, curating people around you that are going to like motivate you and drive you and inspire, whether it's a coach or whether it's a friend or whatever, is super important, because it can be easy to sell out on yourself at the beginning.
Yeah, definitely. I'm listening to Amy Cuddy's book at the moment, Presence. I don't know if you've read it or heard it.
I haven't.
She's the Power Pose TED Talk lady. She talks about the Wonder Woman pose. Definitely worth a watch. Yeah, I highly encourage it.
Okay, cool.
Amy Cuddy.
Okay, cool.
But there was something.
I might have seen it actually.
Okay.
It went viral.
She's a psychologist. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and talks about like when you're slouching, like the different kind of energy.
Yeah.
And like the Superwoman or Superman pose, like holding that big stature, can really kind of set you up.
Yeah. So there was
That's a big thing too, like your physiology.
Yeah, 100%.
To like cultivate.
Yeah, definitely affects your emotions and how you're thinking and all that sort of stuff. But something that you said before about like thinking about little like steps rather than the biggest goal, it comes up in the book, and she talks about like if you focus on process rather than outcome, and you enjoy, it's like the journey, not the destination. Focus on the now and be present and fully experience the moment, and then the outcome still comes, but it's not as important anymore, and then you continue 100%. To achieve it more easily because you're so present and enjoying the moment.
Oh my God, I could not agree more with that, especially right now. I mean, and that's so in my space right now, because it's like where you want to go is going to shift anyway. So if you're not having fun along the way, like, you're screwed. Because it's like you might never even get where you're trying to go. So if you're hating every step of it, then you just like tap out, because you've got to at least, obviously there's times where you're like, why do I have to do these certain things? But there should still be joy and excitement and like, fun with everything that you're doing. Otherwise, like, there's really no point.
I'd say if it doesn't make you nervous, you're probably not challenging yourself enough, right, as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there should be, and that's what that like, when people talk about being fearless, and it's like, that's bullshit. Like, it's not fearless. It's just that you're like willing to be courageous enough to do it anyway. Because I think it's, again, one of those things where it's like, if you're waiting to be fearless, you're going to just like never do it, because you're going to be scared. If you're always shifting and moving and growing, you're going to be constantly at the edge of something that's making you nervous,
Yeah.
And that's just what it is. So,
and maybe they've reframed anxiety into excitement, because they are so close.
Yeah. Well, they say, what is it, like anxiety is, or fear is excitement without the breath or something like that, where it's just, those just those little cheap one-liners, that you can remind yourself of when you're freaking out.
They actually work.
Yeah, totally.
Something you've talked about a lot is collaborating and being a collaborator yourself. What does that exactly mean for you, and how has that kind of helped you progress as well?
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the biggest things is when I started Conscious Boss, it kind of started with Conscious Boss Clique, which was this community of like just like-minded women who wanted to support each other and collaborate. And it was really just kind of building a collaborative energy and supportive energy into like women in business, like, so, because it can be very easy, especially in like a similar spaces and in a small country, to like be like, that person's doing that, so like I can't do it, and it's just really retraining that like energy of like, there's enough for all of us, we can work together and like create more and have way more fun along the way. So it was like that collaborative energy, and then kind of through the events and stuff, I started collaborating with people, like having them at my events and things like that, and that was awesome, and having them in my programs and stuff like that. And it's just been a really beautiful way for me to like give way more value to my clients, grow my audience, grow my brand and things like that, like through aligning with people that you really, really think are awesome and doing really awesome things. And again, a big thing has been like really realizing that doing that with people that have that same energy, because not everybody in business thinks like that. Not everybody in business is collaborative in the sense of like that mentality. Yeah. So it's more like that mentality of like, how can we work together to like all grow together,
Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Have you ever had a guy want to work with you?
Yes, I have actually. I just actually recently finished working with my first guy. It was interesting. I had some people reaching out like a little while ago, and then I tried to
Was there
sort of
resistance
change
at
my.
first? Like, no.
There's massive resistance. No, massive resistance. Yeah. And like, I sort of changed my website to sort of, because I was like speaking to women and sister and babe, and like I talk like that, and then it was like, okay, if I'm speaking to men, it's going to be like, hey, person. Like, it was weird. Like, the copy was like really hard for me. And I was like, this is like, I don't know who I'm talking to anymore. So it was kind of weird. But so I've kept that the same. But I've toyed with doing stuff with men, but I have the story of like, I don't really know how to work with men, but I may still. I'm not sure if it's like going to be something I'll like really dive into, but I feel like I don't understand men enough to like coach them. I don't know.
But sometimes they like that nurturing, more kind of like
Yeah.
supportive female energy. So
Totally. No, hey, look, it's definitely come across my space more than once. It just solidified it yet.
Well, we are conscious of your time, so we will start to wrap up. Thank you very much. So we usually only ask our interviewees 2 last questions, but we're actually going to ask you 4, just for a little extra spice.
Yeah.
So do you want to do the first 2 and I'll do the last 2?
Yeah, cool. So, and I think we've kind of covered on this a little bit, but what is your biggest drive? What gets you out of bed each day, Emily?
Oh, God, big question. Honestly, I think recently it's changed. Like, I was always just inherently driven to just create and just kind of push my boundaries. And like today I posted just about settling. Like, I never wanted to feel like I was settling. So it was just kind of always driven to kind of create. Whereas right now I'm driven by joy at the moment. Like, I'm just like, how much fun can I have today? Like, how much joy can I be in today? Like, that's how much can I play? Like, that's what's driving me at the moment. January will probably be quite different. So, so I think it changes. But like, I think I'm just inherently driven to like squeeze a lot out of life,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. And on the back of that, what is your biggest fear?
Ooh, biggest fear. Biggest fear. Oh my gosh. That's a good question. I haven't been asked that in a while. What is my biggest fear? I would probably just say, like, this sounds so lame, but like, feeling like I could have like done more. I think like we feel like regretting stuff that we could have done, or like feeling like we could have done more, or I really want to. I really would like to leave a big mark on the world, like from a social aspect, and like be able to contribute in a big way. And I think my fear is that like, that is an extra thing you have to focus on being able to do. And my fear is like, I'm not going to be able to make that impact in that space and creating that space. So, and my fear is that I'm going to die alone as well. No, like not like actually, but like sometimes I'm like, am I going to be single forever?
Can I ask you a question? Are you actually an extroverted person, or you're a situational extrovert?
I would say I am, I would say that I am probably more extroverted, but I also I need a lot of alone time as well. So like, it's not like I need to be around people to get energy, but I think that I'm like naturally able to be in those spaces. So maybe that's what you mean, situational extrovert.
Yeah.
What that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm probably yeah. Because then I need to leave and like have nobody talk to me for like ages.
Yeah, recharge time. We're very similar. We don't really talk to each other at home.
We do. But after an event, it's like, just go in your room, I'll go in mine.
We don't actually have separate rooms.
No.
Okay. I'm just going to leave that one be.
Moving on.
No, I totally get it.
So if you had 1 week left on Earth, what would you do with it? And you're not sick or anything. It's like you can do whatever you want. And what would you do with that last week?
Oh my God. I would go snowboarding somewhere. I would definitely go snowboarding for like 1 day in some amazing place like Japan or something. And then I would, oh my God, what would I do? Oh my God, you guys, these questions are hard. I would probably want to set up some kind of like foundation and really solidify like people I wanted to align with to like, I don't know, solidify some kind of like corporate contribution and like have some kind of legacy that was like, in place for me to leave with. I don't know what that would look like yet, but something like that. I would like to have that in place too. But there would also be play and loved ones.
The heat of the moment would obviously push it out for you, so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I was going to add, because we asked about your fear before, and you said like worrying about not leaving a legacy or having a big enough impact. I feel like you've already done a fair bit of that. So, even if next week was your last week, you still made a massive impact on people. So
Oh, thank you. That's really beautiful. I appreciate that.
I'm going to keep talking so I don't make myself cry. So if there was one thing that you could help to install in everybody's lives, what would it be? Like one thing that everyone had to do?
Oh my gosh. Just continue to figure out what really lights you up, like continue to chase that curiosity and like continue to just be courageously committed to like just finding out what really like lights you up and feels good for you, because I think that's the secret to like not just better relationships and a better life, but like figuring out what your purpose, for lack of a better word, because I think that can be a heavy word, but like, just like if the joy, like, could it be that the joy is leading you to where you're actually meant to be? Like, I think that it really is, like if it's truly feeling aligned, there's a reason that you should be walking that way, so I think just like taking that seriously.
That's awesome. You're speaking my language.
Yeah, girl.
Excellent. Well, Emily, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. We've just gone over the hour, so we do want to let you roll. But can you quickly just give us, like, what are your socials? Where can people reach out? If someone's interested in Conscious Boss, how do they get in touch?
Yeah, so I am just Conscious Boss on all the things. So you Google Conscious Boss and that should be me. Conscious Boss on Instagram, consciousboss.com. So yeah, I'm pretty active mostly on Instagram. So that's a good place to start. And then there's also links on there for extra stuff like the TED Talk and other things if they want to connect. So and shoot a message and get connected as well. And into the community there.
Unreal. Thank you so much. We'll make sure we link it all in the show notes, guys. So if you didn't hear any of that, let's jump across there. But thank you very much, Emily, for your time.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, you guys are legends. I've had the best
awesome.
chat.
Thank you so much.